Ladies and gentlemen, Flamingo Sundays. Today I'm joined by a very, very inspirational man. I've only known him for a short period of time, but in that short period of time, he's inspired me a lot. He's an international keynote speaker, serial entrepreneur. He does a lot of good in the world. Richie Harkham, mate, thank you for joining Flamingo Sundays.
Mate, thank you for having me. If I would have known the dress attire, I would have, got into my flamingo outfit.
Look at the kit. Look at that.
Mate, do you have one for me to wear?
Unfortunately not.
Okay.
This was given to me by a brand called Festies.
Okay, I thought you had...
It's a friend of mine's clothing brand, and he said, mate, this will fit. So
I thought you had your own merch line as well, mate. Flamingo merch. It'd be good.
It would be good. I think that's the thing I need to get into. It's a new business.
So, Jack, before we start, I've got a question for you.
Right.
So I can see you have a cameraman here.
Yeah.
Hey, tell us what's the story with that.
With the cameraman?
Yeah.
Mate, I'm just full of ego. No, it's...
How much does he follow you? What does he film?
Everywhere.
Everywhere?
Literally. So we come to work together. We actually live together.
Okay.
We work together. We play together. Mate, it's an all-around sphere.
Is anything off bounds?
As in being captured?
Yes.
Good. To an extent, yeah. I wouldn't say it's off bounds, but there's a point where we're like, fuck, let's put this camera down, man.
Has he been on a date with you before?
No, he hasn't. I don't really do dates, but so.
Come on.
But we.
A man of your caliber doesn't do dates? What's going on here?
Flamingo. That's the whole idea of having the Sam and having a videographer is being able to capture my life, right? It's brand building, and I want to, in the future have probably one of the biggest personal brands in the world, sort of like someone like Gary Vee, Tony Robbins, but in a different category, I guess. And the whole idea is for me to be able to capture my life and look back on it and go, I said these things, I've done these things, I'm now in this position. How amazing is it going to be able to look back on all of these things that are actually documented? For a lot of people just have memories, right? So they just have like, I did this, it's a memory. There's nothing actually physically there, maybe a photo.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have my whole life documented, which is...
Very forward thinking. I like it. No, and also I've seen what you've been doing on Instagram. It's nice to be able to pull out snippets from things in your life and use it in a business sense as well.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, it's brand building for myself. So it's, it's going to have a monetary reward in the future, but it's very...
and ego building?
No ego building. No ego here.
Building a company. I love it. I love it. What happened, mate? We're just enjoying it right now.
Alright, so we're all good, huh? Yeah. Oh, that's good. Alright, Sammy. Back. Richie, enough about me. The podcast, we're here to hear about yourself.
Okay.
So look, for... you're a bit of an icon around the eastern suburbs. Everyone seems to know Richie Harkham, right? Mate, give us a rundown of who you are, maybe where you come from. You've had some pretty, incredible things happen in your life. Some pretty hard things happen in your life, which has sort of built you into the person you are now. And I think people will get a lot of inspiration out of that. So, mate, tell us, you grew up in Sydney, I'm guessing?
Yeah. So I grew up in Sydney. I'm second eldest of 9 children, believe it or not. Yeah, I can tell you their names. You ready? Gabby, Richie, Michael, Simon, Rachel, Tova, Raphael, Jacob, and Ellie. Isn't it crazy how many I got? Quite unusual, right? Growing up, I didn't really like school so much. Right. I wasn't really interested in
First
school.
Thing in common, tick that off the list. We
there we
didn't
go.
like school.
I know. I just kind of couldn't apply myself. It's funny now because I love learning now, but I just don't like what they taught me in school.
Right.
And I didn't like authority. I've never liked authority. People telling me.
Second tick.
People telling you what to do and how to do it. I always think that, I always thought, I know what's good for me and this is how I want to do things. I live my life kind of by that. I don't live by the rules that regular people live by. When they wake up, when they eat, what they should do, what they shouldn't do. So I grew up in the eastern suburbs. And my father was a migrant, moved to Australia when he was about 16 years old, didn't finish high school.
Right.
And with my uncles and my grandparents, and I got to learn from them growing up. They went to the markets every week. My dad was in the schmartis, which is the fashion industry. A lot of your listeners probably know that.
Right.
It's Yiddish for fashion. And, he was just starting out, and he had to hustle. He worked 20 hours a day with my uncles, and he'd always be at the factory, and I used to go along, and I used to love it. I used to love the hustle of going there, and they got a deadline, and they've got to sell You know, they've got to sell, they've got to produce it, and then they say more than what they can do, but they just want to get the sale done. And then they're like, we got to work all night to do it. And I love the hustle of it all. And from a young age, I just like couldn't start. I couldn't wait to start working, you know. And I remember when I was like 9 or 10 years old, my dad was in this dodgy lock business. He was getting locks from India, and something went bad. He had like 500 locks, and I took the locks, and it was me and my cousin. We were walking down like Reservoir Street in Surrey Hills, and it was rough back then.
Locks as in like a lock and a key?
Yeah, like a lock and a key. People used to use it, and I was selling a lock and a key, you know, for $3. I used to buy them with my dad at 50 cents, and I work out if I sell like 100 locks, right, I make $250. Back then, that was like a shitload
lot of money. Yeah,
money.
Especially the 10-year-old kid.
10-year-old freaking kid. No one worried I was going to get like kidnapped or anything. I'm one of 9. Who cares, right? You're one of 9 kids. You lose one, no big deal. I remember I got lost once in a zoo. No one even realized I was lost.
They
went home. No one even knew I was like lost, you know. So, you know, I used to see how you can make money. You know, you sell 20, you sell 30, you got goals, you got targets, you got inventory. I was 100%. And at 12, I remember I got my first job. I was so stoked. I worked in a bakery in Rose Bay called Grandma Moses. I was a bagel boy. I was making $4.50 an hour, and I was freaking killing it, man. I used to love that job. And everything that I do in my life, I learned great lessons from a very young age. And you know, where you are right now, Jack, you just think, okay, I'm this person. But you are a culmination of all your experiences, of all your lessons. And that's why you should never want to do things differently. You should never want to look back in your life and say, you know what, if I had a chance to do that over, I would do that differently. Ever. Because you are a culmination of all those things. And what you perceive as bad now that happened to you, if I take that away from you, you might not be the same. You might not be the flamingo man. Right?
That's so true, man. That's so true. I remember the reason this whole flamingo thing started is I was sitting on my balcony one day in Newcastle looking at the ocean with a friend of mine, and I went to Europe a couple of weeks prior, and over in Europe I bought this massive bucket hat, and on the brim of it had all of these flamingos. So it was a thing in Europe that when we got on the piss, we bought this hat, and it was like Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays. Anyway, I brought that thing back to Newcastle, and I had the hat on, and I was sitting there on Instagram, and I was like, it's Flamingo Saturdays. And ever since then, it's just been like this massive flamingo thing.
But why is it Flamingo Sundays though?
Well, because this podcast gets released on Sundays.
Oh, got you.
Yeah,
got you.
Usually, like, obviously people my age, I like to go out on the weekends and enjoy themselves, right?
Yeah.
Flamingo Sundays are probably feeling pretty down in the dumps about so Flamingo Sundays is about inspiring them.
I actually, when I first saw Flamingo Sundays, I was like, where's the party at? Where's this flamingo one at, you know?
That's coming. That's in the pipeline.
Stage 2.
That's right.
Stage
Flamingo
2.
Parties. Right, back to you.
Yeah, so 12 had my first job.
The hustle started from a very young age.
Very young age. You know, 15, you know, I talk about this in my speech, I already had my first proper business.
Right, and what was that business?
It was a vending machine business. I needed to make money whilst I was at school. You know, I need to hustle.
Money while you sleep,
100%. And I had to think about how can I make money and not be there? Because I'd have to freaking be at school. And I didn't want to be at school, so I was like, okay, I'll do vending machines. And I started looking, right? You go to Campbell's Cash and Carry, you buy water for 30 cents, you sell the water for $2 in a vending machine. That's some serious margin there, right? That's like 6.5%, you know, margin on the earnings times by, right? So it's like an amazing margin. And I remember my first place I got it, I put it in a boarding house in the city, the vending machine.
I could think of some incredible things you can put in that vending machine that do a lot better than water.
yeah, probably. And I did really, really well. You know, really? I just find out what Coke would offer them by putting in a vending machine. I just undercut Coke.
Right.
And they weren't actually offering such a great deal. And I remember I got it in 3 different places. And I'd get home and I would have big bags of coins, you know. It was really ridiculous. And I'd have to cash the coins on a Friday because I needed the money for the weekend, right? Because the bank shuts at 4 p.m. And I used to keep the coins under my bed. And every bag had like $700 in it, like cash money, or 50s, 20s, 10s. You used to count the coins. It'd take an hour to count the coins. Back then, there was no like coin counters, right? So you just put them in separate bags. And I remember one time it was a public holiday and I was this girl I had a crush on. I was at Mariah in year 7. I'm not going to tell you. She's around the community. Married with 2 children. For her sake, I'm not going to tell you. And finally, she agreed to go on a date with me.
Oh, yeah. And you just
I was like 15.
You said, baby, don't worry about that.
No. We went to like the Paddington Inn. It was like old and dingy back then. And and we went there for lunch. And I never forget, it came time to pay. It was a public holiday, so the bank was closed, right? So I had all these freaking coins. So I brought a backpack and I had like bags of 20s, bags of 50s. Every bag is $10 and the bill was like $110. I'm like pulling out bags of coins and she's sitting there going, what?
And that's why she's married with 2 kids, Richie, and it's not you.
I actually got a kiss out of her. She was like, I'm impressed with the hustle.
Right.
So that was my first business.
The vending machines, we got bags and bags of coins. Right. That was at 15, you said. So you would have left school at when? 18, 17, 18?
Finished school at 18 years old.
Boom. Straight out of school, you've just done the vending machines, you got a shitload of dollar coins sitting in your bedroom.
I went to Mariah College, yep. And
where's the next?
So next stop was what else did I do? I started a secondhand bookshop in Rose Bay on New South Head Road with my grandpa. He was in a bookstores.
Right.
It was like probably my only business that ever failed before in my life, which is pretty crazy, but it was a great lesson. And my grandpa was pretty old back then. He used to fall asleep. So he'd be sitting at the counter and he'd just be out and people would want to come and buy books. He'd be sleeping. I couldn't wake him up. And he'd just leave the money and take the book. It was really, really funny. But then at the same time, I started university. I did a commerce degree at university.
Right.
One of my skills is I have the ability to deal with huge amounts of stress. I train myself. So I actually got my brain tested. And I'm what you call an alpha variant, which means that I'm able to process more information than a normal person is. And you can work on that yourself. And then I also have another thing which is called a low mental coverance in my brain, which means that you're able to take on more amounts of stress and deal with things. There's a place in called Studs. They're in Fairfield. It's a government agency. It's an EEG test on your brain.
Strip club in the cross.
No, it's Studs. Yeah, but it's really, really good. I really highly recommend it. You test your brain. You could see where you're deficient in your brain, and then they'll give you exercises where you can actually build that up. Because of neuroplasticity, your brain's able to completely change all the time. So it's mostly they deal with trauma patients, but also for CEOs, entrepreneurs, you could see where you lack. You can see if you're going into a loop, how much you can concentrate, what your focus is, how much you're able to just swap out of thoughts and things. It's really interesting to do that.
Right.
So I do multiple things in one go because life is very short. If you live a full life, you only have like 32,000 days in your life or something crazy, right? So I'm very aware of that. My life is short. My life will end. So I want to do as much as I can. I got so much to do, right? So I did university. I did a commerce degree. I majored in accounting.
Right.
I hated it.
Yeah, I was going to say, so you and accounting don't really look like you go hand in hand.
I hate it. Mind you, I wouldn't say I'm very book smart, but I'm very smart at working out the system.
Right.
And killing the system. And I worked out the system of university and I did really, really well. But I never went to lectures. But I worked out what you needed to do well.
Right.
And it ended up being this guy called Adrian. He was in my uni. He's a real computer nerd. I introduced him to his girlfriend at the time, and he typed up every single lecture for me in exchange for that legendary dude.
And then entrepreneurial thing. I'll get your girlfriend, you get my lectures.
And then we went one step further. I swapped the lectures with this guy who then, I said, if I give you all your lectures, you'll summarize all the lectures and pull out all the main points.
Oh my gosh.
To another guy called Mark. And then I had all the lectures summarized into the main points and never went to a lecture and did really well. I got in top 6% in the Golden Key International Honor Society at Sydney Uni.
Wow.
Without going to any lectures. So it was pretty good. And then I finished uni and I started work straight away.
Right.
So at age of 21, I was already in the workforce.
Right.
And the advantages to starting work straight away is that once you start work, you have a longer working life. You're ahead to you fail more earlier. Yes. And you have more time to make money, right?
That's the thing. It's exactly the same with me. I started working when I was 15 years old, and now I'm 23, and people my age are just coming out of university. I'm like, how the fuck have you got all this stuff and done all this stuff? I'm like, we're the same age. And I'm like, the difference is I've had an 8-year working career. Yeah. And in that 8 years, I've been quite smart with who I've hung around and what I've done. So, you know, like 8 years is a long fucking time. Whereas if you compare someone 23 to 31, it wouldn't feel so weird, because 31, you're like, oh, they should be in that position, right? So I agree with that method. Get working early, right? Yeah,
but the only one thing is, so working gives you discipline, which you need, right? And you have a better base to start earning money, obviously. But the one thing we're studying is your brain is like a sponge. I'm going back to the brain again. And at those early years, it will pick up a lot more and it will absorb a lot more. But it's not what you learn. It's actually training your brain to have deadlines, to deal with stress, which is exams, to learn things and be tested on it, which is so important to have that skill in your life and further on. The accounting degree, one of the things I do now is I buy businesses. It's part of my entrepreneurial thing. And the accounting degree taught me to read financial statements, which is such an important thing in my world, in what I do. My first business was a backpacker hostel business. In the city. It was like in the beginning of kind of like backpacker hostels. So we were like one of the first backpacker hostels. We took over a boarding house. It was me and my younger brother. And it was like learning to manage personality. It was crazy. So
it was like a party scene every night.
Well, the thing was, it wasn't really that many in the city. Wasn't like, it was more people that worked. They were here for longer terms. So it was like a boarding house turned into a backpackers. So sure, we had like young people coming from Scandinavia and Japan, but it was mostly like people which were working for more long term. So it's a bit rougher. And my staff, which is hilarious, had like this Rastafarian guy who I love. His name was Rasta, and he was a full-on Rastafarian with dreadlocks and everything. And he was such a cool dude. And I had an Israeli guy called Nissan, and had a painter called Paul the Painter, a Hawaiian Aussie guy who was an alcoholic who never got along with the Rastafarian guy. Had a guy that lived there called Cockatoo Paul. Cockatoo Paul.
He had a cockatoo on his shoulder.
He has a cockatoo on his shoulder. It's Paul Mallory. His cockatoo's called Mr. Pickles, right? And that guy used to make so much money. He used to busk in the city, and he also used to work for me and live there. And all these people lived on site,
right?
And I would have to manage all these personalities at the age of 21, and they were way older than me, and it was just throwing me into the thick of things, you know. But we did so well, like we were booming. And I remember we took over the building next door, and it was actually a housing commission. We couldn't get into the building before we took it over. And we finally got in, and it was like someone had died in there. There were lice in the building. Someone hadn't left the room for like maybe 5 years and peed in there every day. And I had to had a contract with these Korean students to turn it into a backpackers in 2 months, or in like, I think it was like 5 weeks. So I had to like gut the whole building, and then had to like rebuild it, and it was a disaster.
Right.
But we did it, you know, and we made quite a bit of money out of that. Me and my brother, and from there I bought Harkham Wines in 2005, and
so that led. So you went from.
I bought my first property at 20. My father brought us up. He came from nothing, right? So the way he brought us up was, when I grew up, my dad didn't do as well as he's done now, but he always taught my siblings and I, you know, you got to make your own money. You know, when I'm not going to give you anything, you got to make your own money, which is one of the greatest lessons to have, right? And the thing which he gave me was, when I was 22, a year into my backpackers, he said to me, it's time that you buy your first property. He was in a property, my dad. And I said, Dad, I did all the maths. I'm an accountant. There's no ways I can afford it. And he's like, you know what? You can. You just have to take the plunge. And it was one of the best lessons. So young.
Where was this property?
It was 699, Unit 1, 699A, Old Southhead Road in Vaucluse. It was a small 2-bedroom unit with no parking.
Got that property now?
I'll tell you my property story. You want me to tell you now the property story?
Yeah.
Okay, property is really good. I use property to buy pretty much all my businesses. I leveraged off my properties and I scaled up every time.
Right.
So I had 699 at A Alton Head Road. I bought it for $345,000.
In what year, roughly?
10 years 18 years ago. 18 years ago, right? I fixed it up, lived in it, held it for 5 or 6 years. Held it for 6 years, right? And then I took my second plunge, which is to buy in Bondi a 4-bedroom semi.
Boom, and there it is.
7, 8 years later.
How much was that? Do you know? Do you remember?
$1 million.
Which is a lot of money back then, right? 18 years ago.
No, that was like 10. That was 10 years ago.
Still $1 million 10 years
ago.
It's
cheap.
Now it's cheap.
What I used to do is for my businesses, every time the value went up, right? So if I bought it for $1 million, and I'm not going to tell you the value of it, but just say it's worth $2.5 million, or just say it's worth $3 million for numbers' sake. $3 million, you got $2 million in equity there.
You can finance and pull that, right?
Pull out $1.6 million, and you use that $1.6 million to invest. You're making 10 to 15% on your investments. On a safer investment, you're making 8%. You're borrowing the money at 3-4%. Exactly, yeah. All of a sudden, you're seeing cash flow come in, right? And I've used that to buy all my businesses. So property is the most stable asset that you can have. Now I own more than one property, residential and some commercial stuff as well with other people. But it's obviously the most stable, and now you see the market's going back up. I mean, I don't have to tell you.
It's time to reinvest in some businesses, huh? So look, we did that. The property story is pretty incredible. We should do another podcast on just the property stuff.
Anyway, so then I did. So
that's what bought you Harkham
Backpackers. Harkham Wines. Harkham Wines I can speak about for an hour, but we don't have a lot of time. But Harkham Wines, basically, it's me, my dad, and my uncle bought it together.
Right.
My dad's got 8 kids. My uncle lives in LA. I was 25, never worked outside of Sydney before, really. And I took this venture upon myself. Knew nothing about wine.
I was going to say, do you even drink wine at 25?
I like bourbon and Coke and a little bit of wine. I drank a little bit. I didn't love wine per se, and we weren't in it for the wine. There was an unpaved road on the property. We kind of guessed they're going to pay the road. The property was going to go up. It was a nice little investment at the time. What I didn't realize is I learned a very good lesson there about due diligence. It was mostly my dad. I was a minority shareholder. I was very engulfed in my other business at the time and getting out of that and selling that than I was in buying this one. And I kind of left it to my dad. There were 4 businesses on that property. At the age of 25 years old, I was dumped out with my partners, not interested, in the Hunter Valley as a young Jewish boy, running a German restaurant where they were serving pork knuckles.
Just schnitzel and pork knuckles every day.
Pretty much. And I remember I once had to go and my dad is going to kill me if he hears this, but I once had to go for this restaurant. I had to go to this special freaking butcher where they sold real pork knuckles, because it was like Oktoberfest there, and I didn't have time to drop it back to the Hunter Valley. I was going back to my parents, and we do Shabbat dinner, and I remember they've got a fridge. I shouldn't be saying this, but they've got a fridge downstairs, and it was all wrapped up, and I put the pork knuckles in the fridge. It wasn't a food fridge. Shit. And I was just like, I am the worst Jew
I don't think your dad's going to be listening to Flamingo Sunday, so we should be pretty well.
But I ran that restaurant, and there was a pottery business
on
that freaking thing. It was like an outdated business, and I had to run that business. And then there was a little lodge, and I had to learn how to run a lodge. And then he had a show winery and a cellar door, but he made shittiest wine, and I had to learn how to do that. And everything that he did, the old owner, he was old and he's kind of at the end of his tether, was all shit. And I learned a very valuable lesson there. It's you got to think about in your life, what is going to have the most impact? What is your why? What is Jack Henderson's why?
Boom.
Why do you do the things that you do?
And why did that teach
Why are you doing Flamingo Sunday? What is it that you can contribute? I'm just going to throw that out there to you. It's not about you. It's what you could contribute to other people, right? And what I had to sit down and realize from a young age is I've got all these 4 businesses in one, right? I'm not going to shut anything down, but what am I interested in? Where's my passion? What am I going to add to the world? What is it that I love to do? Where is my natural skill level at? You know? And when you can think of all these things, you can work out, okay, I don't want to be a potter, even though I had to learn how to be a potter. At time, setting up a glaze, learning how to do a slip, spraying, like The Ghost, right? The movie. So, you know, and I shut down that business. And the restaurant was like a shitty restaurant in Germany. I wasn't interested. So after a year, I shut down that business. I kept the lodge. And I was like, you know what? I actually love when you take something from nature, which is grapes, and then you can put it in a vat and do nothing to it and leave it alone. And on its own, it shoots up. Noises come out. Gases come out. It starts fermenting. You know, you take a grape and it ferments into alcohol. And it's so artisanal in the making of wine. It's such an awesome process. And I fell in love with taking something from nature and transforming it through fermentation into something that people can enjoy and love, and where it's really artisanal and you know, it's something which you can share with other people, which is what I love about wine so much. And at Harkham Wines, you know, in 15 years that I've been there, I had to, there's hundreds, thousands of wineries in Australia. I had to make a winery, learn how to grow grapes. Now I buy in grapes. Had to learn how to make wine, set up a brand. Then you've got all these great things, but then you actually got to sell the wine, right? And what's going to separate your wine? You can have a great tasting wine, but you got a shitty brand. What's going to separate that? So then you have to learn, okay, what is about my brand that's going to be unique that no one else will have, right? So what is about the Harkham family? So my grandmother, Aziza Harkham, used to make natural wine for a family in Israel in 1950. No electricity, no running water. It's a great story. So I started calling it Aziza's, right? And the lesson is in that, I'm not going to go into a lot, but in every bottle of Harkham wine, there's a story. Every brand is a different story. People want to know stories. They don't care about telling them stuff or teaching them stuff. Everyone wants to know stories. Exactly. Stories are what sell.
And people relate to that stuff too, right?
100%. And in 15 years, we've done extremely well. You know, we sell now, we export Japan, New York, Hong Kong, Paris, London. I sell out of wine before I even bottle it. We have over 500 people come every weekend. We've won so many awards. My 2018 Aziza Shiraz.
Did you win some big award for the best wine or one of the best wines or something?
Yeah, one of my wines came second in Australia just recently. My Aziza Shiraz, and constantly. And it's, you know, what you start at. There were so many years in the winery that I learned about endurance, about perseverance. You know, there was no light at the end of the tunnel. From 2005 to 2010, I didn't know what I was doing, really.
You would have been burning cash, I'm pretty sure, too, right?
I did everything very smartly, but I made every single mistake that you can make for 5 years. I remember the first year I was there, the old owner was trying to teach me how to take out grapes out of the vat after it ferments. You got to undo the vat because you can't pump it because they're in skins before you press them off. And he was a German guy, and we used to call him Mad Max, and he'd smoke a cigar, and he went to light his cigar, and it didn't light, and he told me undo the vat, and he went into the laboratory to get a lighter, and I undid the vat really quick, and went bang, bang, bang! 10,000 liters of wine spilled all over the winery, the whole 2005 Shiraz. His winery was called Windara. Spilled all over, coated the whole floor of the winery, right? And I wasted the whole thing my first year.
I'm sure Mad Max was a happy man.
Can you imagine? Now I wish I took a photo. I was so ashamed.
You should have had a videographer with you, my friend.
I was like, I want to go back to Bondi.
Fuck this Hunter Valley thing.
But the lesson of Harkham Wines is it was perseverance and endurance and resilience to get to where we have got to now. Because if everything was easy in your life, you'd never be able to achieve anything. And the lesson is when things are hard, it means you're on the right track.
Exactly.
If things are easy, something's wrong. Something's wrong. It's not going to be as good as you think.
Yeah.
Right? So I did that. So Harkham Wines still exists today. I was a founder of that. We've done extremely well. It's still around. It's a fantastic little business.
There's another side to your story that we haven't got into, and that's what I want to finish off on.
Okay.
It's the story of having a life-changing accident that's then taken you into, it's not a business, but it's something that probably means more to you than any other business you have, right? Which is called
Harkangel. Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk about that. You had a pretty intense accident that put you in hospital for a very long time.
Yeah.
You want to give us a little overview of that? Why that accident then transformed the way probably you think and what meant the most to you in life that then, brought you to Harkangel?
Yeah, so in 2013, I was really privileged to go to Kenya, Africa for the first time. I was the director of a charity called Saikiri Boarding at the time, and it was a boarding house for very disadvantaged young Maasai girls in Kenya, Africa. Maasai, do you know what Maasais are?
No.
So Maasai warriors are seen to be the fiercest warriors in the world. They're in Kenya. They're the ones that jump, that wear the jewelry. Legend has it that lions are scared of them. And part of their rite of passage, going from a teenager to an adult, they used to have to hunt a lion. Now they don't kill the lion anymore, but they go face to face with the lion. So these are really tough people.
Right.
And I was building a boarding house there. So 80% of that community, they expose their women, their females, their young girls at the age of 11 or 12 to female genital mutilation, which is really sad. And a lot of the young girls are sold for the rest of the family's survival. So we built a boarding house for a lot of young women, and it was kind of like an accelerator program. The kids which were there, we just gave them security. We gave them their basic rights, they had education, they had electricity, they had food, shelter, security, and it was unbelievable. So I was there building that, a second one of those for the charity that I was working with at the moment. And I met a young girl called Lucy, and I shot a documentary on her. Lucy was exposed to all those things, but she was the most amazing young girl because her adversity, so much adversity in her life, but she had such a great attitude to life. And I started noticing all these kids in the third world. They have absolutely nothing in their lives, but they are so amazing, and they're just so happy, humble, grateful, and kind, and will do anything for their education, which is something which we miss here, right? In our world, in the third world, education is a privilege and it's not a right.
Exactly.
So I was already doing that. I was part of another organization which I started with somebody else, and I had my accident in 2014. I had a motorbike accident, really bad accident. It left me in hospital, in and out hospitals for 4 years. Had a first in the world operation in Germany. I couldn't walk for over 3.5 years unassisted. I had chronic pain, so bad at times that even getting up, having a shower and getting dressed would make me cry from pain. I have to go back to bed again. I crushed my leg from my knee down completely, and it just wouldn't get better. I had 8 major operations over the 4 years, 7 failed. I had 4 operations overseas. I had recoveries in 3 different continents to try to get better. I got a golden staph infection, which turned into osteomyelitis. So we're going to amputate my leg. I had to do 200 days on the most aggressive antibiotics in the world. And it goes on and on and on and on. Post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, depression, loneliness, injecting a steroid in myself for a whole year every single day. So
it's a pretty intense time, right?
Very, very, very intense.
And I guess what you would have learned in that time is probably all the success you had prior to that, whether it be financially, business success, whatever it was, meant nothing when you're in that sort of situation, right?
100%.
It means nothing.
100%. So you see people which are unwell, and you speak to them, and they can have $1 billion, and they've got that pain that they have, like what I had. No money can help them. Nothing can do. If you're on your deathbed or you're in pain, if you're unwell and you're unhealthy, nothing will help you in life. And the biggest lesson that people can take out of that is that, you don't need to go through what I went through. I had to go through the gates of hell, and I had to, work so hard. And when I was going through my pain and my endurance, I would have done anything to have my life back again. When I was in hospital and I was lying there for 50 days, 60 days, and every morning you can't train, and I'm thinking about icebergs where I go in the mornings, and I'm dreaming, I'm in a room where you can't even open the window in St. Vincent's Hospital because the windows don't open, right? All you want is fresh air. You do anything to have that, right? And when I lost it, I would have done anything to have it back. Now that I have my life back, I appreciate it so much. So appreciate your health, appreciate your life, appreciate those people around you. You don't need a huge accident like what I had.
Yeah.
You know, and
I think that, like, it's easy to say that, but a lot of people will not realize things or change until something dramatic happens in their life. Right?
They can just come and listen to me. I can tell.
100%. Yeah. But the majority, like being logically, speaking logically, not many people do.
Not many people
cherish their health until they get cancer or diabetes
not many
or on
people
their deathbed. Like, it takes something major to happen in their life for them to go, fuck, life is beautiful and life is short-lived, right?
Yeah, 100%. And what came out of it for me was, like, I was always a tough mofo, right? I never gave up. It's one thing about me. I'm a very resilient guy. You knock me down 100 times, I get back 101 times. But when I had to face my deepest, darkest fears and nightmares, you find a different kind of strength that you never knew that you had. So never underestimate yourself. You don't know how strong you are until you need that strength.
Yeah.
And I never gave up. You know, if I would have given up, I wouldn't have had my last operation. I would be in here with one leg. You know, I would just said okay and given in. But I never gave up. Right at the end, everyone says to me, my last surgeon, after I was really sick for my last operation, said to me, Richie, this is a fucking mess. No other doctor will take you because you're most likely going to have a leg amputation above the knee. And if I operate and that happens, I get an asterisk against my name. So when everyone looks at my medical name, they'll see that I have a leg amputation. And no doctor wants that in their record, right? But I'm only going to take you because I could see you're a hard worker. I could see the type of person that you are. And I said, doctor, we will get through this. We can do this. And if you have to take my leg, that be it. I'll still be a big bad mofo with one leg. Doesn't make a fucking difference to me, right? Because I had that fucking ninja mindset and mentality. And I knew that I would work harder than anybody else. I did over 400 physio sessions, you know, and I knew that I would not give up and I would work harder. And it sets me up for who I am today. I was already on that path a little bit before, but so much goodness has come out of my accident. I would never even take it back, you know?
Yeah.
And a couple of those things are, you know, right now, I was laying in my hospital bed and I never wasted 1 minute. I spent months in bed. I spent hundreds of days laying in a bed for more than 20 hours a day. Hundreds of days, right? And I would always never waste time. I would always have a routine and keep myself occupied with things to do. So whether it be, you know, learning to tie 7 essential knots, I learned how to meditate. I did 5-year plans. I redid my websites for my businesses with people. Then I started people to come into the hospital and actually do courses with me. And one of the courses I did was a woman, she wanted me to be a speaker and I was reluctant over the years. And I said, look, I'm going into hospital. I'm looking for things to do. If you come in by my hospital bed and you start just speaking to me and learning what you need to do, then I'll do whatever, clear my messages, and maybe I'll become a speaker. And she came and I learned to become a speaker. Like, it was only 5 sessions with her. She's an amazing woman called Rebecca Tapp. If anyone wants to think that they've got a message and they want to inspire other people, I can give you her details. She's an awesome woman. And what happened through that is a lot of people, after you go through something major, I wanted to help other people. And a lot of people came to me. And what people lack in any big life change in their life or anything bad that happens to someone, the first thing you want to look for is, what do you think it is? What's the first thing that you need?
What do you mean?
When something bad happens and you're going through something bad, what's the first thing that you need, do you think?
Most people look for excuses and poor me, but what you really need
100%. That's one.
Yeah.
Support is very important. But the first thing that you need whenever you go through something bad is hope.
Right.
Hope that you can get through this and hope that there's an end to it at some point. And when I met all these other people who are going through these huge things, people contacting me going, I don't have any hope. Can you give me, can you meet with me? And all of a sudden I've got all these people. I had people with accidents, had people who were going through massive relationship breakdowns. And then I'm giving them hope that if I can get through what I got through, they can get through what they got through, getting through. And I came up with a framework to give to other people to help them get through anything that they get through in their life and come out on top. And I've trademarked that framework, and it's what I speak about. And it's called a return on resilience. So
Right.
resilience is about bouncing back. A return on resilience is like return on investment, how much cash you get out of the investment. Return on resilience is what return do you get from all your freaking hard work? What return do you get from all your bad experiences? Why waste your time and experiences when you can get something out of them? And the same way we talk about banking money for a rainy day, I talk about banking resilience for a time in your life when you need it. So it's about recognizing that something bad has happened which we can't change, but it's what you can extract out of it that is good, that is positive, that is of benefit to other people. And that's what I speak about. And it's a whole framework called the Kadima framework. And the first step is identity, knowing who you are after something happens. You'll never be the same person you were. I'll never be the same Richie Harkham after my accident. So know who you are now, which is going to be linked to your purpose. And then the second step is integration. How do you integrate what happened? It's what you talked about. Look for excuses, bargain. If only I could turn back time, if I had done things differently, till you reach acceptance. The third one is inner influence. How do you find the influence within yourself to overcome something, right? And then the fourth is inspire. Once you're able to influence yourself, then you move to earn the right to inspire other people. And when you take the focus off you and you make it about helping other people, you'll find your opportunity. And I found my return on my resilience, which was to create the Archangel Foundation, which came out of my accident. So
this is the last thing I want to talk about, my friend. This is how we come into to contact, because I was inspired by what you were doing, and I'm more inspired now. I've learnt more about it. So I think everyone listening to this will be super inspired.
Yes. So
tell us, what is Archangel?
So when I had my last operation in Germany, I was called up before the operation, and it was my surgeon in Germany who tells me that there was a young boy who was killed in a car crash.
Right.
His mother and him were driving in a car. Truck came around the corner, smacked in the back of them. The boy flung forward, hit his head. He was brain dead, but his body was alive. And his father had this terrible decision, like, do you turn the life support system off, or do you allow your son to be a donor? He was about 13 years old, and his dad allowed him to be a donor. I got his knee. It's the first in the world. Graft of a knee transplant. Right. With meniscus and cartilage. Later, I met 7 other people, or heard of them, all who got parts from this young boy. In his death, he gave life to so many other people. And I was so inspired by seeing other people, all who got, someone got the knee, other knee, someone got the elbow, liver, heart. And I was like, the only way we could communicate to a donor's family is through an anonymous letter. In the letter I wrote, I can never pay him or his son for what he's done for me, but one of the things I do is I build schools in the poorest place in the world. And I wanted to build a school in his son's honor. And I raised money. I had to think of a name for my wine to raise money. And he was like an angel to me, so I called him the Archangel.
Right.
And I opened the school in Myanmar. And I saw so much goodness coming out of that school. I thought, hold on a second, what's the opportunity here? And I created the Archangel Foundation, where our goal is to build 100 schools in the poorest places in the world, where the world is forgotten. Where if a child isn't in school, they start work from 9 years old, and it's hard labor jobs. And the problem with that is once a child starts work at a young age, where child labor is the norm, their odds of getting their lives back on track after missing that integral beginning part of their lives is almost less than 3 or 4%.
Right.
And they fall straight back in their parents' cycle of poverty. And we empower them and their communities to change their lives through education. And we're in this amazing time now where the communities can see the benefit that it's doing, right? And at Archangel, we've already done 9 schools. We're very fortunate to have Jack, who's committed to doing the 10th school. He's going to raise money. He's going to come on our trip. We do a 6-day trip, which is an amazing trip. We're going to take 20 Aussies with us on 6 days. I was going to be for the whole month of April. And it's awesome to learn a new culture and immerse yourself in the education with the communities and the children, and to be a part of it, be a part of the changing the world.
Mate. And that's why I think you're here more than anything, because I seen what you were doing and it's fucking inspiring. And I think part of my story is I took education for granted. I was like, fuck education, I don't need school, what do I need school for? But like, my mindset's completely flipped now, and it's like we take for granted because we get it so easily, what someone would do anything for, right?
Yeah.
So I've completely flipped. Sure, school wasn't for me, but the fact, like, it doesn't have to be for me, but I just have to realize that I have to be grateful because I got the opportunity to choose whether I wanted to go to school or not, right?
100%.
And these kids don't.
And imagine you were brought up and you can't read now, or you can't add, or even worse than that, right now, you don't know how to use a phone or a computer. You know, in the schools where we have, and now they're saying, which we're going to do, my next initiative is computer labs and libraries. Imagine growing up and never reading a book before in your life. No Harry Potter, no anything. And these are these kids' lives. They have hard lives. And it's not like their parents want them to work because they're cruel, but they live hand to mouth. The money they make on that day from working in a field is what they eat that night for dinner. So sometimes the families are so poor, and this is what you're going to experience, the kids have no choice but to work. Yeah. And all the kids, even the ones that go to school, most of them are working, whether we can help it or not, for 3 months of the year in school holidays. And they work 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, not 6 days, 7 days a week. So when school comes around, they've seen what the alternative is in their life. They would do anything to be in school.
Exactly. And we take it for granted. We piss it up against the wall, a lot of people, right?
Yeah. And with giving back and what you're doing, Jack, is it's like me telling you, you know, how it's like to drive a Ferrari. I'm going to show you videos. I'm going to tell you what it's like. But is it the same to drive in the Ferrari?
Yeah, exactly. No.
It's never.
Yeah.
So I can tell you as much as I want now about me and mine, about the kids. But until you actually get there, and it will change your life forever, you'll come back with a whole new perspective to life.
Yeah.
The rules that you live by will be different. The perspective you'll have will be different. And your heart will be opened in a different way. Because when you give to people who have nothing and you don't expect anything, you know you're not going to get anything back, but you can see the love and the joy that they get out of it. And you see what you do for them. And please God, you'll come there. You're going to do a whole school. We'll open your school. You'll come back a year later, the school opening. And you'll see those same kids a year later, 3 years later, 5 years later. And the lives that you make out of that one school that you're going to do, it has a compounding effect infinitely in the future. You will help thousands of people from that one school. And the beautiful part about these countries are, you know, and I see that in Africa, India, Myanmar, Cambodia, any of these countries where people have nothing and you give them help. And mind you, they're embarrassed to get help. They don't want a handout in Myanmar.
Yeah.
You don't want to ever give people anything. You want to empower them. You don't want to, it's like giving the person fish or teaching them to fish. You know, for them to get a school, we don't give them a school. They've got to donate the land first in the community. They've got to agree to put in 20% in building materials. So they got to really want it. They got to sign a huge certificate, right? So they're partners with us in that school forever. It's an amazing, amazing thing.
Mate, I'm pumped.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
That from the start to the finish, that podcast is quite a journey, man. It started a lot different than it ended. I think there's going to be a lot of gold in that for a lot of people. To finish it out, I always give the guest the opportunity to ask me a question. So, Richie, ask me a question, buddy.
What did you have for breakfast today?
Oh, not a question like that. I had protein pancakes.
Protein pancakes, okay.
Yeah. No, something that you think the audience will get value out of, something you want to know, like, you know, what do you...
okay.
Maybe something I didn't ask you.
Yeah, okay. Can you give me from what you've been through in your life, your 3 biggest tips to success?
Your beginning is definitely not your ending. So where you start and the way you're brought up does not have to be the way you finish your life.
So would you call that reframing your life?
Absolutely.
Like reframing your story?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, using everything you've been through as an excuse to go, fuck, this is why I don't have money or freedom, or this is why I can't do this, is not a very good excuse, I don't think. Number 2 is probably around, which I talk about a lot, is like thinking money's going to bring you happiness. Because it definitely doesn't.
I love that.
And it just, I think all it does is brings what's really inside of you to you know, the surface. If you're an angry, insecure person, all money's going to do is make you more angry and more insecure.
I love that.
And same thing, if you're a happy person and a giving person, all money's going to do is bring that to the surface, and you're going to be a happier person because it can, you know, bring more happiness to your life. You can do more things and you also give more. So that's the second thing. Fuck, somebody had a short life, man. Third thing is probably around gratitude and like we were just talking about, realizing how fucking grateful we are, right? Yeah. Like something as simple as education is something that we like, fuck, I don't want to go to school today. I don't want to do that. Like every kid grows up, I reckon maybe 10% of kids actually want to go to school, actually want to go and learn. They'd rather be doing something else because we have so much here. So realizing what you really have is something else. And that's why I'm going to do this trip. And
I love that.
It's because I think you can only realize so much in your own country. Like you can only be as grateful as you can be. And then adding that layer of experiencing what other people have been through.
I love that.
Adds another layer.
So learning
exactly.
is so important.
Yeah.
And I think even to add to that is, you know, what is it in your life that you have a chip on your shoulder about? Not you specifically.
Yeah.
But for the audience, people to learn. What is it that's holding you back in your life? And everyone has something.
Yeah.
What is it in your story that's holding you back? Are you scared? Are you scared of putting yourself out there? A lot of people are. Does that speak to you? Are you putting yourself out there as if people are going to expose you, or are you scared of failing in something?
Yeah.
What is it in you that's stopping you from being the best person that you are today? And that's what I work with a lot of people, to help them bring out the best in them, the best that they can be. Because life is so short. And if you don't start today, then you're never going to start.
That's it. You click of a fingers and life's over,
That's
right?
it. Or it changes forever. 1 second, our lives can change forever.
100%.
Let's have a beer nuts, Flamingo Sundays.
Bro, thank you so much for coming.
No worries, mate.
That's gold. And people are going to see, Sammy's going to be with me when we're in Minimais. They're going to see what it's really fucking like on the ground. And I think that whole trip will not only inspire me, but will inspire a lot of other people to want to come on that same journey.
Fantastic.
Cheers, brother.
Thanks, mate.
Happy Flamingo Sundays, huh?
Happy Flamingo Sundays.
Oh.